Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty. Hoy me tomo selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dangerous Games Podcast. I am Courtney with Reckless Cards, and this is my stunning, beautiful, immaculate, gorgeous, perfect. I love that word. I'm going to use it every day. Stellar, perfect, beautiful. I think I said perfect more than once, but you're so perfect. I had to say it twice.
So
The
not.
original Mrs. Breaker, Mrs. Squirt's Cards, Sarah.
Hey girl, how you doing?
Good. I feel like we record 2 episodes at a time, and I got a spray tan today, and I feel like I am getting darker.
You're kind of blending into the back, and it's okay. So there you go. Look it, perfect. Doesn't even look like you got a spray tan.
Yeah, I just gotta stay in the light.
Well, this is my favorite co-host and my best friend and my family member, not by blood, but who cares?
You pick your family.
Courtney from Reckless Cards. So I guess tonight's my night.
It
Last
is
time
your
I
night.
checked.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's just get right into it. Mine's a little different. It involves a story that actually happened 10 houses down from when we lived in Portland.
Wow.
So we've kind of heard about this guy a few times. So we're just going to get right into it. So, an iconic American professional football player, Stanley Wilson Jr., had the world at his fingertips. Following in his father's footsteps, both on and off the field, Stanley Wilson Jr.'s father, Stanley Wilson Sr., was a
That's a
powerhouse.
mouthful. Sorry.
They're going to start being called junior and senior after this.
Wonderful.
Was a powerhouse player in the fullback position who was drafted by the Bengals in the 9th round of the 1983 draft. So that's his dad. But drugs would soon sideline him. Junior was born on November 5th, 1982 in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to his parents Stanley and his mother, Dr. D. I think you say Poulain Lucas. When Junior was born, his father was playing football for the University of Oklahoma Sooners. Eventually, the family moved to Cincinnati, where his father was the star running back. He played 2 positions. He started off as a fullback, but ended up being a huge star in the running back position for the Bengals. But soon after after he was in Cincinnati for a little bit, Junior and his mother would move to Oakland. This is really confusing all around because it never said that I don't think I ever saw that they married. Now, there's not a whole lot of information on Stanley Wilson Jr. You have to do a lot of digging, and so I did as much as I could, and I never found that they got married, his parents. So Junior and his mother moved to Oakland because she was furthering her education, her undergraduate degree.
She was a doctor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, of course, a doctor. But I thought maybe it was also part of her name. Maybe it was just her name was Doctor. I don't know.
I would just spit my beer out.
But I got it now. Okay.
Okay.
But once Junior's mother was done with her undergraduate degree in Oakland, she made the decision to relocate to New England area. So she went from the West Coast to the East Coast to continue on with her education. Now, during this time, Senior's still playing. He's playing for the Bengals. He's in Cincinnati. He's, traveling with the team, doing his thing. He's having a hard time staying clean, but he's doing his own thing while she's raising Junior by herself. Well, Junior actually decided to stay in California with his paternal grandparents because they lived there, who would later become his legal guardians. And this is just crazy to me.
It's like these 2 adults had a baby and then decided
They didn't want to have responsibilities.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I was at with this. And that's how I perceived it the whole time. And I said, I understand his mother wanting to finish her education and Stanley Wilson Jr. wanting to stay back to be with his friends. But the whole situation to me seemed extremely weird. Junior was extremely close to his mother, which made it even weirder because he was like a mama's boy. And there's nothing wrong with that.
It's like one of those things where he just wanted her attention and she wouldn't give it to him, maybe.
because she was so focused on her degree.
He was like very self-centered. I don't know.
But at the same time, he couldn't stay with the dad because the dad was traveling. So
Right. And
like
a drug addict. So.
so I kind of get it, but it's just like, what? But he would was really close with her, and he would spend time in Boston with her while she was attending Harvard University. And Junior was even the ball boy for the Harvard basketball team and would attend classes with his mother when he was younger. Junior had contemplated actually attending Harvard, but could not handle the brutal winters and being away from everything that he knew back in California, especially his grandparents. Junior decided that Carson, California is where he needed to remain. Upon returning from his last trip to Boston to be with his mother, Junior enrolled in Bishop Montgomery High School in Torrance, California. Once enrolled, Junior was a standout student, a player on the turf as well. Like, he was just all around amazing, which doesn't surprise me. His mom's getting her degree. She's obviously got the smarts too, and her dad's athletic,
So he's got a little bit of both of his parents.
Yeah, good mix. He was playing safety on the football team and being a member on the track team as well. Junior had everything going for him. Junior wasn't only amazing on the field, but he was amazing at the theater production too. So it was really interesting that you had talked about last week about how Brisker was into music, and it's kind of like they have like this one side, but they also have this really soft side. And Stanley Wilson Jr. was extremely good at theater. And it was kind of a shocker to me. So he had been formed in many of his high school shows. And Stanley Wilson Jr. was putting his best foot forward in life and was proving to follow in his mother's footsteps academically. He would become a calculus tutor to those struggling. After being the standout in high school, he was looking forward to attending college and had so many options to choose from, but decided on Stanford University. But before Stanley could enjoy any accomplishment, there was, of course, a setback in his personal life. Having grown up in Carson, California, with his grandparents, his dad actually had moved. He had been, kicked off the team. I get into that later. He had actually moved to California in the Hollywood district. So he was closer and he could see his dad more often. So having grown up in Carson, California with his grandparents, Stanley Wilson Jr. was introduced to football and track and began to thrive as an athlete. Sports was in his blood, especially football. Having seen his father play at a professional level made him want to do the same. Stanley's father eventually made his way to California, and Junior was able to see his father more. But in 1999, when Junior was only 17, at a prime time that he needs his dad, his father was convicted of stealing $130,000 worth of property from a Beverly Hills home to support his drug problem.
No.
His father would later be sentenced to 22 years in Lancaster, California.
Oh.
Now, this is a very important thing to remember. Having his father out of the picture didn't deter Junior in any way. If anything, people around him thought that it made Junior work harder to be who he was, or so that's what everybody thought. In fact, having his father out of the picture and behind bars before he was supposed to suit up for Stanford did indeed affect Stanley. His idol was incarcerated, and now it was up to Junior to prove he wasn't like his father. But growing up with a father addicted to cocaine and who was suspended from the NFL for his addictions may have caused more wounds on Junior than what you could see on the surface. Even though he was suiting up for himself, Stanley Wilson Jr. suited up as a redshirt true freshman season in 2000. Junior would go on to play for Stanford for 4 years, and by his regular season as a sophomore in 2002, Stanley was a starter. Once again, Stanley dominated the turf and even earned honorable mention All Pac-10 honors by his senior year in 2004.
Wow.
So, I mean,
he's smart and he is very talented.
Correct. But he didn't just thrive in football, but also track. He continued track also at Stanford. And having earned Stanford's top sprinter, and he posted times in the 100 meter and 200 meter. Some of those times are still ranked among the top in the school's history even today.
Wow.
So he was just built to be athletic, and be smart. I mean, he was just smart. It's crazy.
You do these freaking ones every week where it's like all this good stuff, and I know that it's gonna be bad. I know it's gonna be bad. And I'm all like, this kid has everything going for
I
him.
know.
His dad, like his
Just wait.
dad sucks.
It's gonna
Like
be
we could have done a
okay.
whole episode about his dad too. I'm just okay. Go ahead. You're destroying me tonight. Go on.
I will be gentle. Um, Stanley was elected by his peers to be a senator in the Associated Student Body and even pledged to the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, also known as the Alpha Mu chapter.
Alpha
And
Moon. So he's smart, athletic,
in
good
a
looking.
fraternity,
People like him.
yep,
He's popular. So okay.
everything. And he
Okay.
served as the VP of that chapter from 03 to 04. Junior became a mentor in the Children's Visitation Program. It only gets better.
Oh,
Where he focused, this is heart-wrenching, where he focused on inspiring youth with incarcerated parents to become a positive asset in society.
oh my God.
Taking something so dark and turning on the light for the future. After astonishing achievements in his academic and personal life, Stanley Wilson Jr. graduated from Stanford in 2005 with a BA, Bachelor's of Arts in Urban Studies.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of times they don't finish. So I think that was just awesome in itself. He could have easily gone into the draft.
Right.
Once Junior had graduated, he did indeed enter the NFL draft in 2005. Stanley would be selected in the 3rd round, so pretty high up, by the Detroit Lions. And he was focused.
Another Michigan.
Yep.
Investments. All right.
I saw that. I was like, oh, girl's going to like that. He was focused on becoming a premier football player and a second-generation NFL player. Stanley would play 2 full seasons with the Lions, and during a game, sadly, in his 3rd season, Stanley sustained an injury and was placed on IR, and his contract with the Lions was re-signed to a 1-year deal. That was actually against my Giants. Unfortunately, it was determined that they thought he had pulled a muscle. No. It was determined that he had torn his Achilles tendon, and this injury would indeed be end of his career in the NFL. But he didn't let it bring him down, and it didn't stop him on his life in a good way. It goes bad.
I know. I'm waiting for the shoe to drop here.
It's coming. Regardless of the cards that he had been dealt to Stanley, he still made time to volunteer and help those in need.
Of course he did.
Yep. From 05 to 07, he was a motivational speaker who inspired high school students to focus on education, health, fitness, and achieving their goals. Stanley cherished spending time with his family and friends, driving, reading, conducting research, and listening to music. He traveled the world to places like the Caribbean, Italy, South Africa, maybe he saw Brisker, Australia, Israel, and Egypt.
God, he's got a little bit of Bison Daily in him too with his
traveling.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was an avid learner and had a brilliant mind. He knew that a quality education, real-world experiences, and an established network of friends and mentors were critical to him while he was transitioning into a successful post-NFL professional career. In 2008, Stanley successfully completed a certificate at the Aristi Institute of Executive Education in the Warrenton Sports Business Incentive. Say that 10 times fast.
That's a lot. That's a mouthful.
With business management and entrepreneurship program. The Wharton School program is at the University of Pennsylvania, and it was actually sponsored by the NFL and the NFL Players Association, which I thought was
so
cool.
they give them a place to go and educate themselves after they finish. That's cool.
And I think that's awesome. In 2009, Stanley completed the NFL Player Development Program, High Growth Entrepreneurship at Northwestern University.
Let's go
So
Northwestern.
he's still like intertwined with the NFL so much, and I love to hear that because I feel like a lot of players fall off the radar.
Well, yeah, and it also seems like he still had, his mom was like constantly in school educating herself, and so he finished his football, career, unfortunately cut short, but he decided to continue his education very much like his mother,
Yep.
the perpetual student, Dr.
Dr. D. Polusa Luca or something like that. Poluna.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to say that again. Okay, so in 2009, he actually enrolled in the pre-nursing program at Hunter Bellevue School of Nursing in New York City.
He's been all over.
Yes.
Detroit, Chicago, California.
Yep. Just keeps going. But his mom's over there. So at least, he's kind of close to his mom because Boston's probably not that far from New York. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in nursing in 2014. So now he's got a whole nother degree. He's got his, he can do urban studies and nursing now. After graduating, Stanley worked in the healthcare field in New York City and later relocated to Portland, Oregon.
I'm like, how did he get to Oregon?
Yep, here we go. Once Junior was in Oregon, his life started to change, and it would soon follow in the same footsteps as his father. Stanley would go on to add multiple felonies to his name and his reputation. I was actually able to pull up all the cases, and I read them all. And these are how, this is how it's just broken down. Just a lot easier than trying to do them individually. But started in June of 2016. Stanley was arrested for burglary in the first degree, attempted to commit a Class A felony, 2 times a criminal trespass in the second degree, aggravated harassment, and disorderly conduct in the second degree. Wilson was actually shot in the abdomen by an elderly man in Portland. Yeah, that was the one that was not actually that far from our house.
I feel like he played football for 2 years. Did he have like was this like brain trauma? Like, how does a person just change that much?
We'll see. Just hold on to your seat, girlfriend. But the homeowner who caught him trying to break into his house through a window naked. When cops arrived, they found Wilson in a fountain in the backyard and arrested him on charges of first-degree burglary and first-degree trespassing.
And
Wilson had no prior criminal history, and his injuries were not life-threatening. In court, it emerged that Wilson was battling a drug problem, which reportedly included meth use.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He pleaded no contest rather than taking a guilty plea because he was, quote-unquote, not quite there mentally at the time of his offense, according to his prosecutors.
Right.
Hours before he was shot, Wilson, that same day, had broken into another home in Portland, where he fixed himself a drink and stole a book, because why not, before the resident got back, according to the police. So, that shooting happened, like I said, 10 houses down the road from where we lived in Northwest Portland. Once he was released from the hospital from his wounds in June, Stanley posted his bail of $5,400. Stanley asked the courts that if they would allow him to travel to California to be with his grandparents as he awaited the trial. And they granted it, but I cannot see anywhere that he actually went.
Okay.
Because he just keeps going downhill. So he's still in Portland. February of 2017, he's arrested for burglary again in the second degree, which is a Class C felony. But he's still awaiting trial on his first one. Yep. They actually dismissed it pursuant to a civil compromise, even though it was a criminal charge. While charges were pending in the 2016 case, cops again busted a naked Wilson outside another Portlander's home. He had been, quote-unquote, running around in the homeowner's yard and seemed to be under the influence of drugs, authorities said at the time. But roughly a week after being sentenced to the 3 years probation for the initial break-in attempt, Wilson was back in handcuffs for another nude burglary attempt.
Why does he keep getting undressed to go rob places?
It's very common for meth to get hot.
Because it makes you hot, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I don't do drugs, so
don't
but I did read that. Oh my goodness.
he was charged with second-degree burglary, a Class C felony carrying up to 5 years in prison and a $125,000 fine. Luckily for Wilson, the homeowner agreed to a civil compromise of $10,000 in restitution and no jail time for Wilson. So, of course, for me, I'm like, when I first read the case, I was like, civil compromise, like, what the heck is that? You know? So I looked it up, and a civil compromise in Oregon is a way to have a criminal charge dismissed. The civil compromise statutes in Oregon allow judges and courts to dismiss a charge if 4 conditions are met. The defendant is charged with a crime punishable as a misdemeanor. The person injured by the act has a remedy by the civil action. The person injured acknowledges in writing before trial that the person has received satisfaction for the injury, and the defendant pays costs and expenses.
I feel like that is like if we could do that like across the board for like
Right?
crimes, that would be so much better. Like, hey, you did this shit, you messed up my house, so now you have to pay for it and you don't have to go to jail. Like
I just think it was crazy because I've never heard of it being used. I know
never
of
heard
it,
of
but
that
I've never
either.
heard of it
Yeah,
actually
I
being
knew
used in a criminal case.
when you said it, I
So
immediately
that was crazy
knew.
to me.
Like when you said it, I immediately knew what it was gonna be, but I'd never heard of that before. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So he kind of chills his crap, and actually between that time and his next crime in February of 2018, he changes his name to Ezekiel Ezra Jr.
Oh.
And the court granted it, which was kind of weird because if he's pending trial under another name, I don't know why they allowed that one.
Well, so he was pending. I thought he had settled everything by this point.
They had settled on that crime, the second one, but he still
But
had
the
an
first one.
outstanding. Yep,
Oh, I thought the first one he got like 3 years of probation.
that's
or
what he was
something.
facing.
Oh,
Yeah, he was facing
Okay.
that, but he was facing that, waiting for that, and then he got a second strike, which Oregon is not a 3-strike place like California.
Yeah.
But then he got the $125,000. It could be that or 5 years in jail, and they settled on $10,000. So
Right, okay.
he changed his name. It made no sense to me. I checked that name. There's no criminal history on that name, but then he changes it back in 2019 to Stanley Wilson Jr.
man.
I don't know what's going on. But in February of 2018, he was arrested for disorderly conduct in the second degree, possession of meth, and resisting arrest.
Was he
Charges were
naked
later-
again?
What?
Was he naked again?
No, he was dressed this time, it looks like. Charges would later be dismissed. July of 2018, so just a few months later, he was arrested again for interfering with a probation officer and a police officer. That would also be later dismissed. September of 2018, the courts ordered Stanley to be evaluated to see if he was fit to proceed. Stanley was placed on a 30-day hold and eval at the state hospital. Stanley would be found unfit to proceed until January of 2019. So
Wow.
there was a lot of mental
So
issues
it's drugs
going on.
and mental issues, which
Yes.
I feel like there almost had to be. It can't you can't just be drugs.
Snapped. It's just like, it was so weird. It was just like night and day. And that's how
Yeah.
everybody said it too. It's just like, it made no sense.
It's
and
like two
then-
different people. It's like you
Right?
picked up. It's like you were reading the story about one person, you turned the page, and it was just like a different person's story.
Like Dr.
They
Jekyll and
do
Mr. Hyde.
not match. They do
Nope.
not link up. It does not make sense to me.
Nope. And it's so true. And you see the pictures of him and his family. It's just like, it goes from that to nothing. And it's just so depressing. And it's just, he let it all go. And then it gets into more. So in June of 6th of 2019, he gets picked up again for possession of meth. In 2020, it would be dismissed, stipulated between the parties, and was ordered before the 22 decision to enter rehab. That's how he got it dismissed, was because he was supposed to go into rehab.
Okay.
Wouldn't get there. June of 13th, 2019, so 6 days later, or 7 days later, he's picked up on criminal trespass in the second degree again, which is the Class A violation.
My goodness.
It was later discharged.
What?
It just, they just kept letting him
They
go.
keep letting him go.
Yeah. So by June of 2019, Stanley had 3 criminal cases pending, and the court ordered Stanley to be evaluated once again to see if he was fit to proceed. I That's when they eventually found out that he was fit. I think it was the beginning of 2020. He was found fit to proceed. Went through it, and he was ordered to 36 36 days, 36 weeks. What was it? 1, 2, 3. So it'll be 3 years. No, it won't be 36 weeks. Where am I getting my math from? 36 weeks in county. He had already done time, so he got time served. So he didn't have to do any time, but he was
Right.
on probation. But because he was on probation and he violated his probation like a million times, he would be on probation for at least 15 years at that point. That was his punishment.
Okay.
To get clean, go to rehab, and be on probation. Well, he relocated down to the LA area, back to close to his grandparents. They were the ones that were supposed to take care of him and watch him while he's on probation. Sadly, August of 2022, he was arrested in LA he made the headlines for yet another home invasion.
My God.
This time, he was this baffles me. He went through a Hollywood Hills home worth $30 million and he had caused upwards of $5,000 worth of damage to the place. When officers arrived, they found, here we go again, it's Wilson, found Wilson taking a bath in the outdoor fountain using soap, and he had pilfered from inside, according to the reports. Once again, they found him in a fountain naked, just like in Portland.
Gosh.
I don't.
Stanley, what are you doing, my man?
Yes. So he was charged with 2 felony counts of vandalism and 1
Imagine
count.
being his like family where they're like, hey, just so you know, we picked Stanley up naked in a fountain again. He's going to
I couldn't
jail.
even imagine that conversation, honestly. I'm not even lying to you. I would just be like, okay. But so he was charged with he had more charges put to his name. But after Wilson was booked into the LA County Jail for the Hollywood Hills incident, a judge found him incompetent to stand trial. So this made sense to his attorney, because it seemed more of a result of a mental health than a criminality.
Yeah, I would agree.
Agree 100%. It's obvious that Wilson was often disoriented, either from untreated mental illness, drugs, or both. During one of his naked burglary and trespassing sprees in Portland, another homeowner encountered Wilson on her property in the hours before he was shot. This is from her directly. He said, "Do you need anything?" She said, "No, what are you doing in my garage?" And then he said, "Isn't this where I'm supposed to be?" And she said, "No." And I think that it's heartbreaking,
Oh,
because how do you go from this such intelligent man? You have your nursing degree. You're supposed to be just like, where did it go wrong? And although the details remain scant, what is known about Wilson's um demise is that it's gets kind of worse. I mean, he he was in the process of being moved from on February 1st from the LA jail to the Metro State Hospital, about 15 miles away. The state-run facility is organized into 5 sections, which includes a unit that serves the so-called PC 1370 population, which is a higher people with really bad mental abilities, and somehow between that transportation between there, he became unresponsive when they went to go check him into the hospital. So they enter the hospital, and he just drops to the ground, and he actually, sadly, Stanley passes away before getting the actual real help that he needed. And they people send them there to get them to a point where they can stand trial, hopefully one day. But
if you need that much help to be able to stand trial, and unless you did something violent, there it should just be like, we send you there to get help, and then you go upon your merry way. Because if you're that bad that you need that, you probably don't need to get like
correct.
help and then go to prison. Like once
Right.
you're, I don't know, man, this country's fucked.
And it's so sad is that, the authorities are saying that there is no foul play. However,
Of course
John
they do.
Carpenter, an LA-based attorney hired by Wilson Sr. and his current wife, said the family has its doubts about the official line. And the attorney released a statement saying, "We are conducting a secondary autopsy, and so I'm holding back on commenting until we can get confirmation on what our suspicions are." Early reports said no suspicion of foul play. That is not the camp that we're in. That's what and they're thinking that I actually saw some of the pictures. I didn't mean to actually follow on those. His body is badly bruised, and they are saying, his family is saying, that there's no way that he would have caused those to himself, and this is all hearsay. It's nothing that's been proven. There's nothing, it is an ongoing case. He actually just passed away this year. Stanley did. So February 1st of 2023. So it's an ongoing case, but they believe that the officers have a hand in possibly his, passing. Now, did he say something? Was he acting out of line? We will never know. But his body was showing more than what was being said. Now they do believe, his family's believing that there is a chance that he could have had CTE. So it's really interesting that you had mentioned that. And could have been the result of his mental decline as well. But his family wrote that, he would courageously accept new challenges with a strong faith in God and love of his family. Stanley greeted each new day resiliently with hope, optimism, purpose, and drive. He never stopped longing for the life that he knew he deserved. And our hearts go out to everyone involved in this case.
Oh,
Because so I didn't really touch more back on Senior, because Senior wasn't the main focus of this. But he was released in 2016. So his son was out at the same time. And he decided to move across to go back to, oh god, where was it? I think it was like Minnesota or Michigan. It was somewhere over there. He moved back over there with his now wife and their kids. And Senior suffered from bipolar himself in addiction. So it's kind of, is that a possibility? That maybe that's something that he not say passed down, but might have been a factor as well. And
yeah.
there's one really interesting fact, and then I'll leave it on that, is that he played for the Bengals, and the Bengals were set to play on the biggest stage, which is the Super Bowl. And he was the starter for them. And he was clean. He was able to come back on the team because he finally got his life together. And he came back. In 15 minutes before the game was supposed to start, they found him with white powder on his nose, and they had to pull him and put him on the IR. And the Bengals believed that if he would have played, they would have won.
Oh man.
So,
Drugs are
yep.
This was a sad one. They're all
Mhm.
sad. I mean, let's face it, like every episode we do, somebody is murdered, somebody dies, some tragic, horrible thing
But I think
happens.
when they have
But
so
this
much
one's
going for them,
potential.
it always,
I feel like something happened to him. Like something, he had a mental break, he had CTE. There's no way that he just like turned into an
snapped.
entirely different person like that without there being something. And I
But
also think that nobody, like, I don't believe that. First of all, I don't care how he was acting.
I know.
They don't have the right to put their hands on somebody. in
There's like
prison.
bite marks on places of his body that he can't reach.
Yeah.
And
So something happened. Either they weren't watching him and another
Right.
inmate attacked him,
Correct.
and they're not trying to take culpability for their lack of like their negligence, I guess, or they did something to him, but he didn't just, I don't know.
Well, I
Not,
hope that, soon we'll have some type of answers.
yeah.
Obviously,
We'll keep everyone updated
yeah, that
about
would
it.
be definitely be able to know more here hopefully soon. It's a criminal case, it's a civil case, and so it might take a little longer. So,
Yeah. It should be criminal if they find out.
yeah, I know it's
What a
depressing.
disaster. That's so sad. Well, we will keep you updated on this because
Yes.
now I'm going to be watching it. I actually had no idea that any of this happened. So, again, we thank you for joining us today. We hope that you guys stay
Thank
safe
you.
and make good choices. And until next time, bye.
Hello Kitty, me gusta mi titties, me gusta mi booty. Hoy me tomé selfie con filtro Hello Kitty.